Hello, everyone out there in the Trekyards universe. Welcome back for yet another exciting info-packed episode with your favorite captain. That's me, Captain Foley, and my awesome first officer and right-hand man.
That is me, Commander Cockings. Hi, everyone.
Oh, look, Samuel, we have a fellow officer joining us on today's transmission.
That is right, everyone. Joining us today is Sean Tourangeau, the designer of both USS Ares, senior predator Axonar.
As well as the topic of today's episode, Captain Riker's own ship, the Luna-class vessel, the USS Titan. Welcome to the show, Sean. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, let's peel back the layers and take a look at what makes this ship so popular.
And just to let you guys know, we worked with Sean quite a bit to flesh out more details of the ship and make it feel even more real than even described in the novels. The Luna-class vessels are extended mission deep space explorers, first designed specifically to explore the Gamma Quadrant, and measuring at 450 meters long, a width of 205 meters, and an overall height of 80 meters.
The USS Titan, NCC 80102, has a total of 17 decks, and the ship also includes an interchangeable sensor pod attachment, as well as 6 phaser banks and 3 pulse-fired torpedo launchers, 2 fore and 1 aft.
To put that in perspective, that's about 450 meters long. It is about 225 meters shorter than the Sovereign class at 685 meters. The Luna class is in fact around the same size as the Nebula and Curie class, which both measure in around 440 meters, certainly a compact ship.
Initially designed, in canon anyway, sorry Sean, by Dr. Yin-Ra Hawari?
You got me.
Of Utopia Planitia shipyards, shortly after discovery of the Bajoran wormhole in 2369. This class of ship was a mission-specific ship designed to explore the Gamma Quadrant for extended periods of time. However, because of the outbreak of the Dominion War, plans of the ship were shelved for a number of years and retrofitted before launch.
In 2372, however, the first of the class, the USS Luna, NX 80101, was under construction, and during preliminary field tests in 2375, there was a major accident in the engine room, resulting in our special guest, in-universe character at least, Dr. Tourangeau, to become maimed.
The ship had a normal cruising speed of about warp 7.5 and a maximum speed of about 9.975 for about 12 hours. Main engineering was located on Deck 11 and consisted of a double refracting warp core matrix with twin intermixed chambers.
That sounds pretty advanced.
This was a new experimental warp core which improved the way that the power was distributed to the ship, allowing for a much more efficient operation. The new warp core designer, Dr. Ravari, was actually chief engineer aboard the Titan following the events surrounding the Luna's trial run accident. The Luna was not destroyed, but was not put into active service immediately either.
The hull was comprised of a duranium microform and titanium plated composite and was layered with a blade of hull armour in most sections. The initial 2379 construction contract was set out to produce 12 of these starships, and all these ships of the class were named after moons in our solar system, and of course the Titan is a moon orbiting Saturn.
The ship's crew complement was 350 personnel, and in fact the Titan had one of the most diverse crews in Starfleet history, with only 15% of the total crew being humans, and only 50% actually being humanoids. Some of the main species included were Tellarite, Bajoran, Trill, humanoid arboreal Xindi, insectoid Xindi, Vulcan, and even some aquatics, or dolphin-like life forms, but no Packlids. As a result, the Luna class had larger, wider hallways, as well as some crew quarters and staterooms being filled with water. These hall sections were enhanced versions of those we see in the Sovereign class, as the ship was designed with basic similar components. They also included multiple environmental controls as well to accommodate any particular life forms that may require different environmental conditions to be simulated while in any particular part of the ship.
Having a slightly larger focus on shuttle operations, the ship carried a substantial contingent of shuttles, as well as additional support craft. This meant more shuttles for a variety of exploration and scientific missions. The ship had a recessed shuttle bay, which was reminiscent of the older deeper Constitution class style hangars, and a longer runway for landing operations.
These longer runways allowed for support craft to land faster, and so the ship could actually raise shields covering that strip and still be safe for both ships to go to warp, which allowed the Luna class to get out of dangerous situations faster instead of having to wait for standard shuttle approach operations and landing procedures a la Star Trek V. Bonus fact, Captain Riker's favourite shuttle was a Type 11, which he named Armstrong in honour of the human jazz musician Louis Armstrong.
Standard shuttle complement for the Titan at launch consisted of both Type 6 and Type 9 shuttles, work bees, and a new experimental shuttle. After the refit, the complement was updated with 4 Type 9, 4 Type 11, and the experimental shuttles and runabouts as auxiliary ships on standby.
The ship had an ovoid-shaped bridge module, which consisted of 2 levels similar to the Enterprise E, but smaller. There is a raised captain's chair with an executive officer chair to the right and a diplomatic officer chair to the left. All 3 have retractable armrest consoles. Immediately forward of the captain's chair are the flight control officer and the operation officer station. The science station is on the starboard side. The engineering station is on the port side. There's a central front view screen. The captain's ready room is immediately off the bridge facing the rear of the ship, with the main observation lounge facing the forward with seating for up to 10 personnel.
The most obvious part of the bridge is that it's more of a meld of the Galaxy class and Sovereign class designs, adopting the basic geometry of the Sovereign class while still retaining the horseshoe tactical console and back stations of the Galaxy class bridge. An interesting design to be sure.
The ship also relies heavily on its astrometrics room, which is a slightly upgraded version of the one we see in the film Generations, which in this case is run and maintained by Melora Peslar, who we met in the Deep Space Nine episode entitled Melora. She works in a reduced gravity environment, so she can function without the use of her crutches. And seeing as how the Titan has numerous and improved holographic projectors located throughout the entire ship, just like the later Prometheus, she mainly uses holography to talk and interact with others.
Other famous crew members include Wesley Crusher, who was a member of the engineering team for the maiden voyage, at least. Nurse Ogawa from the Enterprise is now chief nurse aboard, and Tuvok is third in command, now being joined with his wife aboard ship. Riker originally asked Geordi LaForge to be his first officer, but Geordi declined, unfortunately.
Following the footsteps of the Nebula class, the Titan has a large sensor pod, which is in fact an interchangeable module and can be replaced with a weapons pod if required. The sensor pod was designed after the DC-10 AWAC, AWAC pods on modern-day aircraft and perform essentially the same functions. It is located up and away from the main body of the ship to prevent any interruption or interference from the ship's electronics, as well as any sound disturbances from the main ship. The main pod is generally unmanned and consists of 3 decks, which are full of sensor and scientific equipment, as well as a large complement of probes.
The 2 tubes on the front and the one on the aft of the pod are in fact dedicated probe launchers rather than torpedo tubes, and while they can be specifically modified to work as weapons tubes, that is not their main function. Given the nature of the pod, it can in fact be manned since it has a command and control room inside. To get there, however, you must be transported there as there is no turbolift access, although in emergency situations, an escape tube could attach to the bottom of the pod to allow for evacuation procedures. There was also emergency access to the pod via several Jeffries tubes as well, and in extreme dire circumstances, the sensor pod can separate and in fact act as a lifeboat for some of the crew. The pod could hold around 50 to 70 crew members in an evacuation, perhaps more, but that would make it extremely cramped conditions. The pod also includes small impulse engines that could be used to maneuver the pod as needed after evacuation.
In terms of weapons, while the ship is not designed for a combat role, it was equipped with the best weapons of the day. The Titan at launch had 2 forward and 2 aft torpedo launchers. The front tubes located underneath the large deflector dish. It was also armed with a large primary phaser strip on the top of the saucer section and a smaller series of phaser strips on the bottom and the single smaller strip under the secondary hull near the warp core ejection, similar to that of the Intrepid class.
For the Luna class's first refit, for which the Titan itself was the first to be upgraded, its systems were brought more in line with the Sovereign class, and its weapon systems were enhanced. Now sporting 4 forward torpedo tubes, a new pair just above the sensor dish, and a brand new quantum torpedo launcher similar to that on the Sovereign class in the lower navigation sensor dome.
Overall, this refit gave the Luna class about 65% of the firepower of the Enterprise E, and while the Titan had the same type and number of torpedo launchers as the Sovereign class, the Sovereign sported faster fire torpedo launchers and had far more phaser strips than the Luna class. The Titan did have one distinct single phaser emitter, however, in addition to its numerous phaser strips. Slightly different technology there, guys. That being located along the spine just above the escape pods. The Luna class is a ship of exploration after all, while the Sovereign is a battleship. In shields, however, the Luna class does have around 85 to 90% of the shield capacity of the Sovereign class.
She is very maneuverable, about the same as the Akira class, and while she's as fast as the Sovereign class in terms of warp speed, the Luna can maintain the higher warp velocities for about 5% longer on average. Emergency warp is also 0.01% faster than the Sovereign's, and as such, after a few years of service, all Sovereign class vessels were upgraded with the Titan's new style warp core configuration. In fact, the overall Luna class design proved so successful that it has spawned at least 3 variants, those being the Comet, Polaris, and Sol classes.
In the original version of the TNG episode Future Imperfect, even though it was only an illusion, we see Riker's fictional service record, which indicates that he was promoted to the rank of captain, and his first command being the USS Titan, on stardate 47203.2379. The Titan was then ordered to patrol the Romulan neutral zone and provide tactical support to Starbase 384, which resulted in them preventing a pre-emptive strike in the Gamma Hydra sector by the Romulans. In the Blu-ray remastered version, the text was changed to reflect the events of Star Trek Nemesis, and said the Titan's first mission was to head up a new task force investigating the possibility of peaceful relations with the Romulan Empire in the wake of Shinzon. It's pretty interesting they actually decided on the name of Riker's future command all the way back in Season 4 of TNG.
Or did they make his command be the Titan because of that episode? Anyway, this mission takes place in the Titan series of books, jumping off at the original Season 4 description and then updating the graphic in the TNG Blu-ray to reflect the Titan books. Fun to see how that worked out.
The Luna class does, in fact, not saucer step and is not capable of landing on a planet's surface. However, the ISS Titan I created for the Mirror Universe does have multi-vector assault mode, which is something I really wanted it to do.
And moving on to Star Trek Online, it also has a lunar class that we can see by 2409 is still active and refitted yet again. The facades have been shrunk down along with thinner nacelle struts. The secondary hull has been bulked out a little, with the sensor pod being made a little bit longer. This version also replaces the probe launchers on the sensor pod with a secondary deflector / sensor dish, and moves the torpedo launchers from the top of the deflector to the front of the saucer. The off torpedo launchers have also been moved just below the exterior shuttle's landing strip. The captain's yacht was also removed for this later refit, so interesting.
And one last fact, as far as speed goes, the Titan is the second fastest ship in the fleet, right behind the Aventine, as the Luna-class starships were eventually equipped with the same slipstream technology present on the Aventine.
And on to behind the scenes, guys. We of course have the man behind the Titan himself, so let's kick it off right now. So first of all, tell us a little bit about the Titan Design Ship Contest and how you came about entering it, and of course how you felt when you learned your design was picked to be the USS Titan.
Well, the Titan contest was announced in the back of the 2005 Simon Schuster pocketbook novel, Star Trek Taking Wing, which is right here. I picked up the book since one of my friends suggested that I looked at the contest. At that time, I had never seriously designed a starship. I have sketched ideas in the past, but none ever got past the sketching stage. After reading over the specs for the contest, I thought, what the heck? Couldn't hurt to submit at least a design. I worked on the submission for about a month or so, and after a few different designs, I submitted the concept to pocketbooks. Flash forward to September 2005, and lo and behold, I get a phone call from New York. I pick it up, and on the other end was Marco Palmieri, the editor, and he started the conversation off with, "Can you keep a secret?" And that's when I started this wild ride into Star Trek.
Cool. So what were some of your major design influence when approaching this design? So what are some of your favorite ships from Star Trek?
Well, the contest stated that it had to fit between the design lineage between the Enterprise D and Voyager. So I started there by pulling whatever reference images I could find back then. And I also started Google searching starships that I liked to see and where I could bridge the generations of starship design. My favorite ships up to that point were the TMP Refit and the Reliant. So I knew I wanted to at least have one view of the girl to look like the Refit, which if you look at it from the top view, you will see the Enterprise, the silhouette. And the Reliant influence comes in with the roll bar and the underslung nacelles. I went from there to figuring out how to make it all work together. So some of the ideas sketched didn't have the roll bars, and some did. I decided to go with the sensor pod idea based off the AWAC from the United States Air Force, since I grew up as a military brat, and the Nebula class from TNG. Unfortunately, the Nebula was never one of my favorite TNG designs, but I pulled from there. I was also a big fan of the ships introduced in First Contact, so I looked at them to pull hull plating and other design elements. People said I copied the Akira class, but I didn't really. I had to figure out how to protect the bridge and connect the pod to the ship, so I gave the design the catamarans. Even though the ship was supposed to fit between Enterprise D and Voyager, I decided to give the escape pods a post-First Contact Enterprise E upgrade. From there, I gave the ship some of the throwback ideas with the clamshell shuttle doors.
And several 3D models have been made of the Titan. The LRE original mesh used for the book covers, which is the one we're using for the animations, and then another model, which is also used in a couple of books, done by Tobias Richter, and then one done for Star Trek Online. So tell us how it was to first see your ship in 3D, and then again when Tobias built it later on, and even as a playable ship in Star Trek Online. Come on, I'm assuming you've got at least a couple in-game.
Well, with Ellery's Mesh, I got to put a lot of input into it since I worked with him at the print company that I was working with him at the time. So it's pretty much perfect for that time, considering it was my first ship being converted from 2D to 3D. Little known fact, our friend Doug Drexler was supposed to do the first model, but he was busy working on a certain show centered around a Battlestar.
I think I've heard about that.
Then a few years later, I hear that the Luna class would be a playable ship on Star Trek Online. I was flattered to hear that. But I had no input on their model, which is why I believe that is the weakest representation of my design. Maybe if Thomas the Cat or T-Cat over at Cryptic gets to update the model, maybe I'll be able to give him my thoughts. Finally, flash forward to a couple years ago, and I get an email from Tobias, who was hired by Simon Schuster to create a new mesh for some new covers. I had one of my other designs created in 3D by him at the time, the Ares from Axanar, and I was thrilled to see what he could come up with. To say the least, I was blown away. I consider his mesh as a first-generation refit. There is more detailing that Tobias put into it that Ellery and I didn't even think of at the time to do.
Yeah, and that's how he approached this whole script, is that the Ellery is the first original version, and then Tobias is the refit, and then the 2409 is the super feature version.
Yeah. Now, I know there was a 6-foot model of the ship constructed for the Star Trek World Tour. Can you please tell us a little about that? Like, how excited were you to have this ship made into such a model of that size and promoted by both Tim Russ and Will Wheaton, of which we actually got to see some live-action footage of them as Titan crew members?
Well, at the end of 2005, I was contacted by John Van Sitters over at CBS, who's the president of Consumer Products, and he wanted to work with me on the 6-foot physical model that was going to be built by Gene Rizzardi and be featured in the World Tour. Side fact, Gene Rizzardi was the model builder that built the Titanic for the Titanic movies. I worked with Gene and his staff by getting Ellery's mesh to them and producing a set of new schematics with color callouts. And then the rest is pretty much history from there, because Gene would send me constant updates of the ship being routed in fiberglass. So I was literally seeing it from a cube all the way up to its final stage. And unfortunately, I never got to see the actual ship in person because it was on the West Coast and me being in the middle of the country. Mm-hmm. But seeing the video with Will and Tim, it was great to see them in action with my ship flying around in the middle.
And do you know why they picked that ship and why that whole thing came about then?
No, they. I think they just wanted to have a different design put in there, and it was one way for them to tie in the novels and the fact that it was the contest just happened. So that's my closest thing to get it into canon, because at that point the Titan wasn't considered canon, and so that was my closest way to get it into canon. So that's why I refer to my design as loose canon.
And do you know why that tour wasn't really majorly continued? Because obviously I hadn't heard about it until I came across it in the script.
What they did after that first California exhibit, they decided to split the exhibit into two. So they instead of commissioning another Titan model, they decided to pull it totally out. So then they just started doing small tours around the U.S. So I think they just split the whole thing in half, unfortunately.
So where's the big 6-foot model now then?
Last time I heard, Alec pulled it down from the Air Space Museum and packed it up. And it looked pretty battered because it's been at the Air Space Museum, it's been at the Mall of America, it's been in a couple of other places hanging for a while. So wow. when Alec put it away, it was missing a Bassard cap. So I think the left Bassard was missing.
Well, nothing a little restoration can do. And obviously we can't show audio or anything in Trekyards, but the link is down below for the video. Do check it out. It's an awesome little extra bit of Tuvok, extra bit of Will Wheaton. I think it's the only time he's got a beard in sort of canon-ish Trek, so that's pretty cool. And that is it for part 1 of this awesome episode.
Very informative, and there's more to come, guys, so stay tuned.
Next week it's going to be a good one, so tune in next Saturday for part 2.
Bye, everybody.